Mammals, welcome aboard. Come on in. I'm going to tell you a story today, and before we start, I just want to remind you to check the thumbs up if you enjoy the story and share it with all your friends far and wide, and please be sure and comment. That's my favorite part, is getting to know you better. It's such a joy. So we'll proceed now. Come right on in. And here's the side of the story. See all these little eggs? Aren't they sweet? There's a story about these eggs, which I'm going to tell you in a few minutes. So have a seat, make yourselves comfortable, and here we are. So, when I was about 7 years old, I was visiting my grandparents in the city, in San Francisco. Now, I don't ever know why I was there alone, because I was always with my brothers and sisters, so, and my parents. So I don't know why it was, but I ended up being the only child there. And one day, my grandmother took me into the city, into downtown, and we were all dressed for the day. It was always like that when we went to what they called the city. They were in the city anyway, but they called it, the downtown was called the city. And it was just such a thrill to be there just with my grandmother. I always loved it when we traveled on the bus, because she always opened a tiny little tin, and inside the tin were little black chunks of licorice, tiny little hard licorice, glossy licorice chips. And I would take off my little white gloves and pick out a little black chip of licorice, and it was a minty tasting licorice somehow, and put it on my tongue. And it was just felt like being with my grandmother when I did that. And then she'd close up the little tin and put it back in her pocketbook. And we always dressed to go to the city, as everybody did then. In San Francisco, I think it was known for its very regimented dress code. There was a certain date that you changed your shoes, both for summer and then for winter. In the winter, you would only wear black or brown shoes. And then as soon as spring came on a certain date, you could wear patent leather or white shoes. And then at a certain date in the autumn, you must switch over to black or brown, even no matter what the weather, or no matter what the day was like. And we could always tell a tourist if they didn't have their the right shoes on at the right season. And I think the only other color of shoe I ever remembered seeing was navy blue. There really weren't many other colors. And so really it was white for summer, or patent leather, and brown or black for winter. So there we were, all dressed for the day. Must have been about, I don't know, in March or early April, and because it was still, you know, wintry there in San Francisco. And we walked into this little shop. I will never forget it, never. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen in my life. It was a tiny shop. Even a tiny girl knew that it was a tiny shop. And the ceilings were very high, and long ribbons came out of the top of the ceiling, and at the end were eggs, beautiful eggs, big eggs like ostrich eggs, or big duck eggs, or geese eggs, regular hens eggs, and even tiny little quail eggs. And they were just shimmering in jewels, like Fabergé eggs, but they were eggs. And they were just the most beautiful little things I had ever seen, ever. And then at the end of these drips of jewels, there were chocolates from all over the world. They were, all of them, as dressed up as the eggs, laced with beautiful creams and buttery colors and flowers just gushing out of them. It was just an amazing display, which, as you can see, I never forgot. And then I was just chilled. I just couldn't get over it. I was just giddy with excitement. And when we left the shop, we went back home. At least that's all I remember of the day. And my grandmother got an egg out of the basket in the kitchen, and I was watching her. She didn't tell me what she was doing, but she took a long needle, almost like an embroidery hook, but it was a needle. And she took the egg and she pounded a little hole in the end of it with the point of the needle. Then she flipped it around and pounded another little tiny hole in the tip. And then she took the needle and stuck it down in the hole and kind of scrambled around in there, just sort of stirred around and around with the top, the bottom of the needle inside. And then she pulled the needle out, lay it on the counter, and then she huffed and she puffed. I've never seen anything like it. I'll never forget. Her cheeks were like big round balloons. And she went, and her eyes were closed just like that. And there was a little bowl underneath it, and all of a sudden a stream of egg came and went right into this little bowl. And then she got a dribble of a thin stream of water, and she swirled it around in the little egg to get the rest of the egg out. And then she got these little scissors. See these little scissors? Just like this. And she cut a hole in the egg like a window. Some of these little eggs have a window just like that. See this little egg? Or this little egg? Or this little egg? Look at that little egg. Isn't that precious? I'll tell you how it happened that I started doing this. So she sat me down with all of her beautiful pearls and sequins and all kinds of beads and trims, beautiful little pieces of trim work. A lot of these this is a rickrack even, you see? And I put the trim around that. So when I was just 7 years old, I started decorating these beautiful little eggs. And she gave me all these things. The reason she had so many is that she used to make beautiful hats. Hats were a very important thing. When I was a little girl, all the ladies wore hats to match their suit, whatever they had on. They had a hat to match. And so in a lady's closet, there would be stacks and stacks of hat boxes all the way to the ceiling. And then they had a hook that they'd bring them down with and put them on for wherever they were going. So she had lots of beautiful things because she made feathers, all kinds of things, because she loved to make hats. She didn't sell the hats because I guess I was told that it wasn't polite for a lady to sell things if their husband was providing for them. So it just wasn't something that most people did. I mean, some people probably did, but maybe not most. So she just made them for all of our family and friends. So she had all kinds of things for me to play with. And I sat at a little card table in her kitchen and made these eggs when I was 7. And then I went home and she packed an egg carton with all the little beads, the different beads in every little cup, and all the supplies I would need. And if you look carefully, see they have inside of them, they have spun glass. See that? So that's the snow. And so she gave me spun glass, and these little beautiful little figures came from Austria. My aunt and uncle had been to Austria, and they brought all these little, here's one on a horse, this little one. See, a little rocking horse, a little angel on a horse. And there are different ones that played instruments, different kinds. She's carrying a little tulip, but others carried instruments that they played. She's got a little box. Let's see if we find any with an instrument. Oh, here. See, she has a little instrument. And all of those came from my aunt. And I would sit outside all summer and autumn, all through the time until it was too cold to sit outside. And it was a beautiful place where I sat because we had beautiful eaves all around our our house out in the countryside, and it was just flowing with ivy, beautiful ivy with big trunks, going up the beams and then pouring back down with the ivy. And hummingbirds lived in the ivy, and their little eggs were born. They had little eggs the size of peas, and they were about the size of the top part of this little thing that I made. Look at her. She's got, her dress matches the design of her little space here, and this angel hair, it's so funny, isn't it? It's it's made of glass, so it would sometimes get into my fingers and itch for a little while until it finally found its way out. But I would sit there, and it's where I did all my most important thinking, sitting there under the eaves, just enjoying the whole experience of making more and more of these beautiful eggs. And the best part about it was every time I finished an egg, I'd run inside and show my mother. It would take me a few days to make some of the eggs. And my mother would just shower me with praise. She would just say, "Oh, Victoria, this is the best one yet. And oh my goodness, I love the detail here. And oh, it's just a perfect little house for this little maid." And she would just be so thrilled with what I did. And it was especially exciting to me because I wasn't a very good student in school. My brothers and sisters were much better than I. And this was the one time when I felt kind of proud. I felt, oh, I want to keep making beautiful eggs so that my mother will always be pleased with me. And so I started to kind of live in this world of gaining, respect, self-respect, by doing these little projects. Well, one day I was walking into the music room, and there was a grand piano there where my mother would, in the Christmas and Easter, she had this beautiful bronze vase. I'll show it to you. I'll take a picture of it. And the manzanita tree, do you know what a manzanita tree is? It's a tree that grows in the mountains where we lived. It's in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I think that's the only place in the world, I could be wrong, but where manzanita grows. And it's this dark red wood, and it is so hard it feels like iron. And the twigs, even the tiniest little twigs, were strong as a nail. And they never broke. They just were so powerful. And so she would have this beautiful manzanita branch of a tree that was kind of planted in this big urn, and dripping with eggs, far more eggs than we have here today, just dripping with these beautiful little eggs. And every time someone came to visit, she'd take them right in to show them the next new egg. And I just was puffed up with, thrill that she was so happy about that. Well, one day I was walking into the music room, and just at the same time, our cat came out of the blue and flew into the air and landed on top of the manzanita tree, and the whole thing went down, and I went down at the same time. I was devastated. I didn't even want to open my eyes. I just wanted to sob forever. I just never wanted to get up. I was hurt. I was deeply wounded. I just thought that was the end of everything. And all of a sudden, my mother must have heard the clamor, and she came up and she peeled me off the carpet and held me in her arms. And she said, Victoria, those little eggs, they were made of love. And if they weren't made of love, I wouldn't have wanted them anyway. But love can never be destroyed. It can never go away. It's not pent up in a shell that can crush and break. It's not ever limited. It's unlimited. and it flows through all of us, through you, from God, and it can't be crushed. It can't ever go away. And there'll always be new ways to express that love. It's all done by God. So you just run and be free and enjoy that love. It's ever yours and ever ours. And I think it was kind of a turning point in my whole way of thinking. I think I might have been rather trapped in that. That was a mistaken idea of love, and it needed to go away. And my mother just helped it go away in the softest way. And once I got my tears dried, and I got right back on the horse, as they say, and kept riding. But this time it was a different kind of ride. From this time on, I just felt that love. I didn't feel like I needed to get love. It was already around me. And I don't know, my whole way of thinking from that point on changed. And I just felt like transparent, I guess you'd say. And these little eggs, really, you could say, they're the beginning of MacKenzie-Childs as people know it today. And when Richard and I met and married, we just both had wonderful experiences as children, playing with materials and so forth. And I think this all just came so naturally because for a little girl to have such skill, it took quite a lot of concentration. You know, I had to use tiny little tweezers to pick up one little tiny bead and just the teeniest dot of glue and everything. And then to keep it from sliding off, you had to know the timing had to be just right. Everything had to be cradled and laid in just the part you were working on. And so I learned to handle all these things until I felt confident in working with my hands. And I think that MacKenzie-Childs just kind of grew out of that just naturally. By that time, gone all the way through, you know, all the schooling you could possibly have. And then you're back just with your little fingers and your wonderful way of sharing. So I just wanted to tell you that I'm really glad you came, and I'm glad I was able to share this with you, and I'm glad that it's here in a strange kind of way, celebrating Easter with us right now. So come back again, we'll have more stories.